What are the best and worst matchups for fantasy football when looking at the late games of week one on the NFL regular season schedule? Time to break it down right here, right now, as we kick off another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Check out my week one picks against the spread, my week one decider column, the start sits you need to know for fantasy football. Check it out at sportingnews.com. Here we're going to expand on both of those things here as we look at the late matchups here in Week one to kick off the 2022 NFL regular season. We broke down 8 games, including the Bills-Rams Thursday night opener there for you on Wednesday. Now we're going to focus on the back end of the schedule here, all the way through the Monday night game between the Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks. We'll get to Sunday night as well. Buccaneers-Cowboys, a big game there brewing in the NFC. So we'll break that all down for you on today's show here. So we'll do that and take a deep dive into the things you need to know. I do have to tell you before we get into it, today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. And thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We are free and available to you on all platforms there. So, all right, let's dive right in. Steelers-Bengals is our first game that we'll hit, an AFC North affair in the 1 p.m. Eastern Time window on Sunday here. The Bengals are 6.5-point favorites. 44.5 is the total here. I've been torn a little bit with the Mitchell Trubisky versus Kenny Pickett. How do I like the Steelers in this one? But I think they'll keep it competitive. Joe Burrow has had a lot of time off there with the appendectomy and things in training camp. So look at the Steelers. They chose Trubisky to start over Pickett. One thing that is already a concern for Trubisky in his first start for Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson is battling a shoulder injury, so we'll monitor that. I think he said he's day-to-day. I would expect him right now to play. He missed practice there early in the week, but I think he'll grind it out. He's the type of guy that we know gets banged up pretty often and works through it a little bit, can miss time as well. So it's just a pain threshold for him. We'll see if he can go. That obviously would raise the bar there for George Pickens being the number one receiver for the Steelers, as he's past Chase Claypool in the depth chart. Claypool is more like a big slot now. They're actually kind of hurting in the slot here because the Calvin Austin's on the shelf. They did sign the former Patriots return man extraordinaire Gunnar Olszewski. So he's the other receiver, but the Steelers kind of shorthanded here. That would also boost Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris's work in the passing game should Johnson miss. But Johnson, if he plays, he's in there for you every week. He's one of those players that you trust at least as a wide receiver too. George Pickens, this is when he's going to start making his mark here. I take him as a wide receiver 3 this week. So you can look at him in this matchup. The Bengals secondary is pretty good. Their best thing that they have is a pass rush, and they can disrupt things with Trey Hendrickson and others up front here for the Steelers. Offensive line still a little bit better on the interior than at the tackles here in Pittsburgh with Dan Moore Jr. on the left side. So, and Trubisky's mobility will help a little bit, but not going to start Trubisky, not going anywhere near that. He's not even a QB2, QB3 right now to see how the Steelers offense plays out on the road here. But you think they're going to lean a lot on Najee Harris, Neely, so he's in your lineup every week. He's a top 12 guy this week. Pat Freiermuth, again, could get a little bump up with Johnson missing time, but regardless, they are hurting there in the slot and may not force Claypool in there for meaningful snaps there inside. So Freiermuth is a pretty solid play as well here against the Bengals. So back end tight at 1, Harris on RB1 on the top end. Again, Johnson, if he plays wide receiver 2, if he doesn't slide in Chase Claypool as an option there as wide receiver 3, just by having someone to throw to. Not trusting Trubisky. And the Steelers defense, you could go in that direction with TJ Watt and company, maybe hoping for sacks. But this Bengals offensive line, keep in mind, has improved here in the offseason with some additions. So they're not maybe the pushovers here. And you think the Bengals offense can move it a little bit. But Joe Burrow, to me, the matchup was pretty tough against the Steelers, against pass defense, better than the run defense in Pittsburgh still. So, again, Joe Burrow, back end QB1. He's an every week play to me. Jamar Chase, same thing. Wide receiver 1 every week there. I think the inside is going to be a little bit of struggle here with Tyler Boyd. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick roaming there in the nickel package. The Steelers are generally better inside there. But, Jamar Chase every week. I think T. Higgins stays where he is usually as a wide receiver 2 there. And Boyd I would avoid as much as possible. Joe Mixon in a really good spot. He dominated this matchup last year as the Steelers were terrible against the run. He's going to get his good volume out of the gate, and they'll lean on him again. The upgrades for the Bengals said better a little bit protecting Burrow, but really is going to benefit Mixon here with the blocking. So do like Mixon to have a bigger game here than Harris in this particular matchup. And again, I wouldn't be surprised the Bengals are a little bit curbed with their scoring and keeps a little bit closer. They're in the lower 20s in this game, and that would help the Steelers stay in the game. So I do like the Steelers to take care of that number. And I think this game, I would avoid the over-under. It's just a little bit too tricky with that 44.5. I think it's right on where it could be here between these two teams. All right, we go from an all-division AFC matchup to an all-NFC matchup intra-division there between the 49ers and the Bears here. So we're hoping this would be a spotlight game for Trey Lance and Justin Fields. I feel good about one of these quarterbacks. It's a 7-point spread in favor of the 49ers. They are very good on the road here in the Kyle Shanahan area when they move away from San Francisco and get to the Central and Eastern time zones. 41.5, so not expecting a lot from the Bears there. The 49ers should be in control. And people are being a little bit careful of Trey Lance here, but I go full speed ahead with Trey Lance. If you drafted him inside the top 12, put him in there. I think he's got the upside. The Bears defense really not a lot after Jalen Johnson on one side. Their pass rush really depleted. Up front, they don't have a Hakeem Hicks or Khalil Mack. So the 49ers should really control this game here. And again, Trey Lance is a back-end quarterback 1. The running alone is very appealing against the Bears. Deebo Samuel, lock him in as a wide receiver 1. Brandon Ayuk has a lot of appeal as a wide receiver 2 this week. So really good spot there for Ayuk to get going. They can move around Samuel away from Johnson, and they're very inexperienced elsewhere in the secondary of the Bears. So and inside-outside, the 49ers should have some fun in the downfield passing game. Now, one thing to watch, however, is George Kittle. Another injury he's battling here, missed practice. So he's a guy that you have to monitor all week long. This is the headache with George Kittle. We love him as a player, love him as a dude, but it's just very frustrating where every week it seems like a little bit of something. And week 1, right away, yeah, it's happening here. So let's watch George Kittle. You might have to make alternative plans at tight end. This is why we've been telling you, if you drafted George Kittle, you had to have a pretty solid backup there. So maybe you have Zach Ertz or David Njoku, and you might have to go there. And again, I like Ertz a little bit more than Njoku this week, but looking at it, just be prepared that you might have to pivot off George Kittle. But if you've had managed Kittle in the past, you should know that by now. So Elijah Mitchell, solid game. We figure the game script is going to be positive and run downhill. So like him as a running back 2 that you drafted him as. He's not going to give you a lot of the passing game with checkdowns. You can see also a little bit of Jeff Wilson Jr. working in behind him, but not going in that direction would not surprise me if this backfield pivoted away from Mitchell at some point because of the durability. But right now, he's their lead back. So the principles for the 49ers, get them in, feel good about it with their offense, monitor the Kittle situation. Now, on the other side, Justin Fields, it's a tough matchup here. This Bears offensive line trying to figure things out at left tackle. You got Nick Bosa on the other side. You got Javon Kinlaw healthy here for the 49ers. You got Fred Warner. So a lot of playmakers there on that side of the ball. So Justin Fields don't love here. They could use Warner to spy him a little bit. So look at that. And again, there's not a lot there that you can look at. So I would try to avoid everything I can here with the Bears offense, with the exception of Darnell Mooney and Dave Montgomery, the two DMs. Slide into the DMs this week. That's their only hope here. But Dave Montgomery, I've downgraded quite a bit. I wasn't a big fan. We've talked about a lot about drafting him. Well, I don't love this opening matchup, and we'll have to see what happens with Khalil Herbert behind him in this new offense for the first time with Luke Gentry. And again, Darnell Mooney is just going to get volume. The Bears are going to be trailing, and that'll get it done here. But Cole Kmet, you might pump the brakes on, because the 49ers can contain it a little bit. And I'm not sure how they're going to get it done with their other receivers here. You have Byron Pringle. The rookie Velus Jones is banged up here and missed practice early in the week. So he may not be a go here, and the Bears might ease him in anyway. So again, Darnell Mooney I like there as a wide receiver 3 based on the game script and the volume. David Montgomery, I'm downgrading from RB2 to flex here. That's how tough I think this 49ers matchup is in week 1 for Chicago. All right, there's 2 more games on this late schedule here of week 1. We will actually get into the late games, the 4:25 window, and then dive into the primetime games as well that we have on Sunday night, Monday night. Good ones this week for sure. Bucs-Cowboys, Broncos-Seahawks. So we'll do all that in our next 2 segments here. Before that, I got to tell you about Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits into your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every tip you take with Turo is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and some exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive with your special host at Turo.com. All right, it is time to continue the show here and continue breaking down the games of week 1. Start, sit advice here and going in detail on the matchups for the week. Our next game is the Packers-Vikings. The Packers are slight favorites here on the road in Minnesota, where they tend to struggle, and Minnesota tends to play them well. 1.5 points in favor of Green Bay. The over-under boosts from our first 2 games to 47. Let's look at the Packers side of things. We'll monitor Allen Lazard and the injury, but if he's good to go, then you're going to put him in there. He has a little bit of an ankle issue. Not 100% sure he's going to go. He missed practice early. Matt LaFleur was non-committal. So we'll monitor that throughout the week here. Christian Watson is practicing in full, so he should be available, but they'll probably work him in slowly as he missed a good part of the offseason program after he was drafted in the 2nd round. We'll see how much they use Romeo Doubs as a big play threat. You might see a lot of Sammy Watkins and Randall Cobb in this game. Robert Tonyan looks like also on track to play here for the Packers. So we'll see how it plays out a little bit. I think if Lazard is in there, he's going to be the clear number 1 target, and he's going to be a play for sure as a wide receiver 3 with some upside with Rodgers this week. And they do have Patrick Peterson on the other side. Peterson's not bad in coverage, but they can move Lazard around. He has some slot potential as well. So something we'll watch. But Allen Lazard is really the only Packers receiver you can play for sure with any confidence if he plays. If he doesn't play, I mean, take your chances with other guys. But it gets a lot tougher here for Green Bay. So that Lazard is banged up is a little bit concerning. He tends to have some durability issues, so we want to make sure that he's good to go before we trust him. There could be a lot of leaning on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I think that's going to be, in general, what the Packers do this season. So Aaron Jones should have a nice game here. The Vikings linebacker core, a little bit changed here. They're stronger up front with Danielle Hunter and the former Packers Zadarius Smith also rushing the passer. So we'll see how it plays out. David Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins, the 2 tackles for the Packers, are a little bit hurting here. They're hopeful that they'll both be healthy and that can deliver at a higher level as bookends this season. But this game, they might be a little bit banged up, and Hunter and Smith could be disruptive. Hunter really was a big absence there for Minnesota last season. So keep that in mind. I would temper my expectations for Aaron Rodgers. I think he can get the job done because, again, Kirk Cousins is going to provide some resistance and put the ball up. I'm just not sure where it's going to go. If Lazard's in there, you feel pretty good about he's going to be involved. If not, then it's going to be by committee there sprinting around with a lot of Aaron Jones. There, out of the backfield as receiver, and I think Dillon had some success against the Vikings, so you might see a good volume for those two backs here as well. The Packers defense, I would not play this week. Kevin O'Connell, offensive-minded head coach of the Vikings, he's got all his weapons healthy, so I think they're going to put up some points here and push the Packers, and I like them to upset the Packers in this game, come out with their new coach. So Kirk Cousins plays the Packers well. He can put up the numbers here with Justin Jefferson. Jefferson versus Jair Alexander will be something to watch, but I think you're too concerned about the way they move around Jefferson as an inside-outside guy here in the formation, more so than now Adam Thielen, as they also have KJ Osborne for their 11 personnel. But I would not extend beyond Jefferson and Thielen. Thielen tends to score on the Packers. That's how he gets a good value. Jefferson is your stud every week. Again, Alexander can do a little bit to slow him down, but again, I like O'Connell scheming him open the way that he helped Sean McVay did with Cooper Kupp last season there in Los Angeles. So Jefferson, good. Adam Thielen as a wide receiver 3 this week. Not extending to Osborne. I think Irv Smith Jr. could have a little bit of value here. The Packers can struggle in that part of coverage, so they don't want to force things in Alexander's direction when it's not Jefferson. They can look in the middle of the field with Irv Smith Jr. So something to look at that. Dalvin Cook has a very good history against the Packers at home, so he's a high upside RB1 in the top 3 or 4 this week. So that's where I expect him to finish. Again, the Vikings D, you're not going there, even though Rodgers has some tackle issues and trying to figure out other things here. There's just not going to be turnovers and sacks that you can exploit with Aaron on the other side in this game for Minnesota. All right, our next game is the Chiefs-Cardinals. The Chiefs go into Arizona as 6-point favorites, 53.5. There's the total we're looking for some points. Let's start with the Chiefs. Travis Kelsey could be a bit tricky matchup. The Cardinals are better with their safeties and linebackers than they are with their corners. But it's Travis Kelsey. They'll try to scheme him up and maybe use him out wide a little bit as well to do that so they can get one of the Byron Murphy or Marco Wilson type matchups. That's also good news for Juju Smith-Schuster. If you're going to start any Chiefs wide receiver, it would be Juju. He's good to go, practice in full there on Wednesday with a bit of a hamstring issue, but he's good there to play. Again, you can't trust the others, Mecole Hardman and Sky Moore and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Too much mix up there in the quickness and speed, and who's going to be the big play threat. I think it's going to be more big play by committee, but figure a lot of working with Kelsey and Juju is teams, we know how they play Patrick Mahomes. They want him to hold the ball, work it down the field, protect against the big plays that happen. So a lot of Kelsey, a lot of Juju. Remember, Juju was a nice big slot there for the Steelers. So 2 intermediate targets that can work the inside there. So I like Smith-Schuster to be pretty solid wide receiver 3 value this week. Kelsey stays as tight at 1. Patrick Mahomes more the middle QB1 this week. He's still playable every week, much like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. You just put him in your lineup. But to expect from Mahomes a big game, I think you can a little bit to some degree, but I think he's more in the top 5 for sure. That's how I'll probably look at Mahomes every week here. But you do have Kyler Murray on the other side that's going to help push him. Now, let's look at the Chiefs' backfield. You're not going to look at Ronald Jones or Isaiah Pacheco. Don't get into cuteness. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to open the season here as a lead. So not loving this for CEH, but he's going to be the volume back, and hopefully he'll get it done here. Otherwise, they'll look for a change here with Pacheco looming there in this backfield as a promising rookie that the Chiefs really like. So reluctantly recommending him. It's kind of like our Devin Singletary recommendation there. We would like to avoid him if we can. If he's your third back, you have a better option. There's a wide receiver flex go in that direction, but you might be stuck with CEH as your RB2, and you got to just roll with him and see what you get. Hopefully, he can turn the corner a little bit as a first-round pick that's underachieved for sure with his value in fantasy, and we just want to see him more involved in the passing game, and that might help as well if the checkdowns come with Smith, Schuster, and Kelsey, and having CH being part of it in this game. All right, let's go to the other side. So not playing the Chiefs defense. Kyler Murray, good solid player. I like the point total. Kyler's going to have to put the ball up a little bit. No DeAndre Hopkins. We know that. He's a 6-game suspension here. So where did the ball go to? Quite a bit. I think it's going to be a committee quite a bit between A.J. Green, Rondell Moore, and, of course, Marquise Hollywood Brown. It's going to be hard to get downfield. The Chiefs have that zone defense, so I could see them bottling up Brown a little bit. But he does have some good success against them with the Ravens, so he's still a wide receiver 3 this week. Zach Ertz comes into play as a tight end that you want to start. He looks like he's going to go with his calf injury, so that's good news for Ertz. But Ertz, when Hopkins was out, really ate last year. I think he's the most reliable short intermediate target there for the Cardinals that isn't thrown to James Conner out of the backfield. So Conner in a really good spot. The Chiefs' run defense still has some issues, so Conner bumps up to RB1 status this week, where he finished last year on the strength of his touchdowns. I like the potential volume that's coming here versus his backups. You might see a little bit of former Chief Darrell Williams in the mix as well in passing situations. There, he was very good in that role for the Chiefs last year, so that'll transition well for the Cardinals, and a little bit of Eno Benjamin maybe giving Conner break. So I don't think it's just going to be a fully loaded Conner. I mean, they didn't do that with him and Chase Edmonds last year. He ended up taking off with the scoring, so keep that in mind in DFS, where you don't just want to plug Conner and thinking he's going to get 25 carries in this one. And again, the game script should also call for the Cardinals trailing a little bit in this one. So again, I'm going to put the green light for Brown, Ertz, Murray there, and Conner for sure in all good spots here in a potential high-scoring game. And I like the fact the game is also at home here for the Cardinals. No elements here in week 1. And again, should be one of the better rewarding fantasy football games of the week. All right, our next game, sticking with a couple teams from the AFC West, the Raiders and Chargers. The Chargers are 3-point home favorites. This is a healthy total of 52 points. Now, I don't know what you're going to get from the Raiders passing game. The big break that could happen is J.C. Jackson may not be ready with his ankle injury to contain Devontae Adams in his first game with the Raiders. So that's going to be a big break for Adams. They're potentially in the works here. Chargers are pretty good covering all the receivers, but I think Hunter Renfrow could have more value if Adams is on Jackson and sees that matchup. But I just don't think much goes away because all the targets really go through those 3 guys now. It's going to be Adams, Hunter Renfrow, and Darren Waller. So Renfrow, I'm going to drop down to a wide receiver 4 or a deep flex play this week. I look at what Adams does. I think if there's no Jackson, you really feel like it could be a special potential sneaky smash spot. For Adams, they're going to try to establish him right away in this Josh McDaniels offense to show that chemistry with Derek Carr off, rekindled chemistry right there with the Chargers. And I don't want to play Derek Carr ever. The Chargers have a strong history of containing Derek Carr, and I don't care if Adams is in the mix. They have the pass rushers there. The Raiders' offensive line a little bit questionable, much like the Bears here. So Chargers still have a little Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa disrupting things, even if they're a little bit light on the back end with Jackson missing the game. So you're not going with Carr, but again, I can see playing Adams Renfrow. Waller locked in as a pretty nice tight end 1 this week as well. Chargers are a little bit weaker linebacker there, but Derwin James does help in coverage. But looking at the Raiders, you got to play their principles: Adams, Waller, and Renfrow. Stay away from Carr. I think you can also look at Josh Jacobs in this game. He should get the nice volume here. Zamir White, the rookie for now, is buried as number 3. So you're hoping Jacobs will catch passes and have that role here and be established. And it's not forcing Amir Abdullah into that role. But for now, Jacobs is a guy that you have to look at here as leads. Just don't ignore lead backs. I think he has RB2 potential this week. Now, I'm not going to play Max Crosby in the Raiders defense. As far as the Chargers offense goes, it's roll them all out. Justin Herbert every week. I think he has potential to be top QB on the board. That's how much he can put up the numbers here. Keenan Allen eats up the Raiders here, so he's a solid wide receiver 2, as well as Mike Williams. Again, we'll see if Donald Parham Jr. misses the game, which looks like it's a possibility. I do like Gerald Everett as a bit of a deep sleeper play. I like him a little bit more this week than Joshua Palmer, their third wide receiver. Palmer could also make some plays here against this Raiders thin secondary. So start him if you got him. If you're desperate in deeper leagues, you could look at Palmer. You can look at Everett in this particular matchup as well, trickling down out of what Allen and Williams get attention-wise in coverage. Austin Eckler, rock with him. He can put up a nice opening game here as a elite RB1. Again, so start him if you got him pretty much is going to be the way we look at for the Chargers in most weeks here. But I would hold off on their defense. I do like their defense quite a bit. But if Jackson doesn't play, that's a big playmaker on the back end. Their new former Patriots cornerback with the interceptions gone. So something to watch out there with the Chargers D, but they'll be playable in some weeks, and they could surprise us this one and what they do here on the Raiders. All right, we still have 3 more games to get to: Giants, Titans, Bucs, Cowboys, and Broncos, Seahawks. We'll do that in our final segment. Make sure you're getting all the fantasy football advice you need here from Locked On Network. And it's not me here, Locked On Fantasy Football. We have Locked On Dynasty. We got our great teams of hosts there, including Marcus and Kate and Ryan and Matt. They do a great job there on Locked On Dynasty. So a little companion piece to this show here. If you're into fantasy football, another show I would highly recommend. And if you are trying to prep for the basketball season, we also have Locked On Fantasy Basketball that you can check with Josh Lloyd. So some really good stuff here on the network for fantasy here, on top of being all over your teams every day. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football and to break down 3 more matchups here for you. Giants and Titans, as we close our look at the Week 1 games in detail. 5.5-point favorite the Titans are at home, 43.5. So like that total there for the Titans D if you're looking for them. And Harold Landry missing the season is a big blow. Their top edge pass rusher, he's missing it after a breakout season and a big contract. So huge blow to the Titans defense, but they have Jeffrey Simmons and others. So Titans are a very strong defensive streamer this week. Derrick Henry running in defense, good little stack there in DFS. Derrick Henry should be back and healthy for 1 week. The Giants a little bit built better to contain the passing game. So not interested in Ryan Tannehill or Traylon Burks or Robert Woods. I want to see even Austin Hooper. I kind of want to see what we get from the Titans new look passing game. All those vacated targets, most in the NFL, kind of revamping the entire passing game here. So really, that's pretty simple for the Titans side of things. Derrick Henry and the defense. Everything else, again, we just want to see. I wouldn't rush Traylon Burks out there or Woods. I just don't trust him. And the Giants have a pretty good secondary and pass defense, as I mentioned. So all that says Henry's the only individual player, the Titans as a whole there for their defense. Now, Giants side of things, Saquon Barkley, yeah, you go with him. The Titans have been pretty good against the run of late, but Saquon, and he's healthy, so you can get him out there for Week 1, much like Christian McCaffrey. If he's healthy, he's fine. He's going to be productive and be involved in the passing game, especially with some questions about the receiving core for the Giants. You're not going to extend to Daniel Jones. So again, wait and see approach with the Giants receiving core as well, with Kadarius Toney and Kenny Galladay and the rookie Wando Robinson. Sterling Shepard is injured. What else is new here? The Giants. So those 4 guys, and then seeing how it plays out. I just don't want to force anything with the Giants there, because you could get very limited returns. You could get some boom. I get it. Someone's going to have to catch the ball there and have an impact there for Daniel Jones. But it's a new offense throwing a lot with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka and figuring all that out. So, again, let's pause on the receivers here. So pretty much you could also look at the Giants defense as well as a pretty strong unit here overall returning. So that you look at the way they've schemed it up, I think they will be better on this side of the ball. They do have the talent, including the rookie Kayvon Thibodeau, there to help disrupt things up front. So when you look at it for the Giants here, the Giants defense, Barkley, Titans defense, Henry, and that's how you look at it, especially when you look at that low point total, 43.5. I do like the Titans to take care of that number. Bucs-Cowboys back up to 51 as the total, 2.5-point favorites. The Buccaneers are on the road in Dallas, and I think this game could go a little bit under here. So buyer beware in this particular game. Let's look at the Buccaneers. I think Tom Brady will be fine, but I think it could be more of a 2-15-2 outing here. Leonard Fournette lock him in as an RB1. Tom Brady back end QB1. Looks like Chris Godwin is going to play, so that's going to make you feel more comfortable about Tom Brady. Mike Evans is wide receiver 1. I think they might be careful with Godwin, so I look at him more as a wide receiver 3. Wouldn't extend to Russell Gage or Julio Jones until we see their roles here behind Evans and Godwin. Cameron Brate, if you're really desperate at tight end, you can look there, but the Cowboys have had some issues there, and I think they knew that and they cleaned it up a little bit. So Brate is a little bit of an extension, but definitely Evans there is wide receiver 1. Godwin, if he plays, is again, you can put him in your lineup for sure as wide receiver 3. And then, of course, Brady and Fournette to play them as you usually would in this game. And Fournette, remember, had a nice opener against his team last year. Brady did struggle a bit, but the Cowboys are big play-dependent defense. They still have some holes there with Trevon Diggs and the Micah Parsons there. So not playing the Cowboys D. I would play the Buccaneers D in this game, however, because Todd Bowles is the new coach. He's going to want his unit to have an important first impression here. And they are loaded. They're back healthy here. Look at up front, Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks. And on the back end, you have Carlton Davis and Sean Murphy-Bunting. And the safeties, the only person they really lost was Jordan Whitehead. And you look at their linebackers, we know absolutely devastating here. So they can make some plays for sure. Dak Prescott is going to be without Tyron Smith at left tackle for foreseeable future. You got Tyler Smith, the rookie, potentially starting at left tackle there. So Shaquille Barrett and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka or have some good potential here to really disrupt the quarterback here in this game. So really going to peel it back with Dak if I can. He's more of a back-end QB1 there where he was drafted versus feeling really good about Dak this week. Ezekiel Elliott's going to be tough sledding against the Buccaneers run defense. They being just a beast in the middle. So with that, Ndamukong Suh with this Bucs defensive front is going to be solid. I still think you look at Ezekiel Elliott, but he's more of a low-end RB2 this week based on hopeful touchdown potential. Tony Pollard might see a little bit run, but I don't want to risk playing Pollard. I don't think I want to extend there against a very good run defense with also very active linebackers who can cover him as well. So no Pollard at Herbert expectations for Elliott. Dalton Schultz is going to be fine. They're going to check down to him quite a bit and use him as a target with Michael Gallup still needing a little bit of time. He could be active as early as week 2 here for the Cowboys here, but still CeeDee Lamb going to dominate targets. So he'll be a wide receiver 1. They'll get the ball out quickly to him and Dalton Schultz as much as possible. Lamb can work the slot a little bit as well for this team. So and Lamb and Schultz, I feel the best about here. Prescott, shaky but still playable in this game with the running game trying to avoid here and the defense for the Cowboys in the matchup at home against Tampa. All right, let's close the show looking at our final game. And this one could be a one-sided affair there in Seattle. And usually it's the Seahawks who usually dominate, but this is a 6.5-point line in favor of the Broncos, 44.5. What storyline is it this game? Oh, yeah, Russell Wilson is returning to Seattle. We haven't heard enough about this game, have we? Okay, he's coming back. Now, what is he going to do there? Well, the Seahawks defense is terrible. So I would expect Wilson to have a very nice game here. So Cortland Sutton, lock him in as a wide receiver 1. The Jerry Jeudy situation, looking at as a wide receiver 3. Albert Okwuegbunam, you look at him as a sleeper this week, tight end. They're working it out. I don't think KJ Hamler is going to be the guy right now early. Greg Dulcich out. They don't necessarily trust the rookie Montrell Washington. We've talked about this a little bit. So in this game, Albert O could have some really good value. And I think to start him if you've got him as much as possible. So Albert O back and tight end 1 if you need him with some injury issues that are popping up, including Kittle there that we're monitoring at the position and Tunyon and others. So keep that in mind. When you look at Jeudy, I think the Seahawks lost DJ Reed. They're a little bit weak now all over. So again, Jeudy can have a trickle down, but I love the Wilson-Sutton combination. It's going to be delivering all season. There's a good parallel there between Sutton and Metcalf, DK Metcalf, for what Russell Wilson left with the Seahawks and what he's inheriting here with the Broncos. So again, good start for the Broncos. Of course, I love Javonte Williams in this game. You look at Melvin Gordon as maybe a flex play here because, again, they're going to get volume. The game script's going to be positive. They probably won't want to overwork Javonte Williams, but I love Javonte Williams this week. A good chance to feature him. The game script, again, should be positive. Use Russell Wilson to get a lead here. Put up the numbers with Sutton, Jeudy, and Albert O. then turn it over to Javonte to play closer here. So Javonte and Melvin could really eat in the second half in this game. So love the Broncos running backs. Everything about the Broncos offense. Again, Seattle defense stinks. This is the matchup you want most in fantasy football to start. And on the other side, oh yeah, we can also look at the Broncos defense here as well. Bringing it in real life, the addition of Randy Gregory, Bradley Chubb, and him could be very dangerous from the outside. You have Pat Surtain too, and that seems like a guy waiting for a Geno Smith interception to take to the house there. So Seattle's a tough place to play, but Pete Carroll has a pretty empty cupboard at this point, and the Broncos are pretty solid here coming in. So I like the Broncos to cover that number, take care of it. If it was a little bit bigger, I might lean towards Seattle, but 6.5. Still feel comfortable with the Broncos winning by more than a touchdown and extra point here this week. You look at the Seattle side of things, you can't like DK Metcalf. You got a deep secondary there with Surtain. You can't like Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf still, you're probably going to default start him as a wide receiver 3, but you can certainly avoid Lockett here in your lineup. So I think he's going to be a guy that you're going to avoid more often than not there. This is not a good time to deploy him at all against this Denver D there. And also you lost Dwayne Brown. So yeah, the pass rush of Chubb and Gregory could really disrupt things for Geno Smith. I wouldn't be surprised if Geno gets benched mid-game and you got one Drew Lock having to play. So this could be a disaster in Seattle. Maybe the one guy you look at is Rashad Penny because you know he's going to get volume. Ken Walker, a little bit banged up there, the rookie from Michigan State that didn't get a lot of work there. So Rashad Penny is really the only playable Seahawk with confidence. Again, Metcalf by default, where you drafted him, got to put him as wide receiver 3. But I don't like the Seahawks passing game at all. This one, I don't like their pass defense. I don't like their run defense in this game. So good way to close out the week. They're really exploiting the Broncos for some good fantasy football scoring all around, offensively and defensively, while you fade pretty much everything for Seattle here in week 1. A rough matchup, but not just the Wilson revenge game, but just getting a team on the up and up while the Seahawks are fading and could be the worst team in the NFL, if not just the NFC here in 2022. All right, there you have it. There's a breakdown of the 8 back half games of the week 1 schedule, the start sit advice you need to know. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll have some DFS advice there that you can look at to close out the week, and we'll have our injury updates. We'll have a better idea of who's playing and who's not there in week 1 for you. We'll do that. We'll also have a quick takeaway from the Rams and Bills game tonight. So can't wait. Football is back, and thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. For your second listen, now check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza is there for you to get ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling, Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, for Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. We'll check you out tomorrow as we close the week with our wrap-up for Week 1 Fantasy Football Prep.